absolutely. So again, our other special guest here today is Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. So thanks again for joining us here today, Chuck. And I understand that you heard everything Chief DePino was saying about the program they're going to have this weekend. I know you're in support of this program, and this ties right into what you're trying to do with the kids in our community.
Yeah, that's correct. It's amazing the pills that are out there. These kids they have access to this stuff. They're trying it. They're taking it. They're becoming addicted very young, and it's happening in the high school. It's happening in the middle schools. You would not believe it.
Can you explain to us exactly what your initiative is?
Well, what we're trying to do is I have 5 children, so we've been trying to find a way to get the kids to not do the right thing. So what we came up with, a group out of Idaho brought a program called DeFi down to Northport, drug-free youth. What they did is they incentivized the kids to join this program, take random drug tests, and as long as you pass the random drug test and you stay clean, you get discounts at area businesses. So it's an immediate incentive for these kids to do this. Enormously successful. We brought it up to Sarasota High School this past year, and we have 500 kids at Sarasota High School that are active right now.
Oh, wow, that's great.
It's a great number.
Amazing. Amazing. I think
so the idea behind it is, if I get this right, you're thinking, okay, these kids need an incentive of some type. Instead of trying to get to them after they've already done something wrong or got in trouble, you're trying to say, hey, before you get in trouble, how about trying this program? Is that right?
Yeah, so typically you'll hear the term at-risk youth. So what that means is the kid's already gotten in trouble. So once you get in trouble, once the cops have you, then you come over to us. And that's no good. The other thing is we'll tell the kids, hey, don't use drugs, don't drink, and when you grow old, you'll have a nice wife, and a husband, and a family, and a house. These kids, this is a microwave generation. They want rewards.
.com. Yep.
10 second. Now. Yeah, bang. So now we can say, hey, listen, I know you want to do this. Do it later on. This is more of a postponement issue. You want to drink all you want, but wait until you're 21. Wait until you're 22. Right now, just don't. And if you don't, hey, this weekend, take your girlfriend to the movies. Save $10 at the pizza place. Makes some sense.
All right, so we're going up into a break here, but when we get back, we'd love to discuss this wonderful initiative with you a little bit more. So welcome back to the SRQ Review. Once again, our special guest today is Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. Now, during the break, Chuck, you were missing something pretty interesting that I didn't even think about. I was saying to you about one of the things with this is it's important to me that it's anonymous because some people may want to dispose of things that they might not have prescriptions for. But you mentioned that that's not really what this program is about.
Yeah, this program is for people that just get a prescription. They've become so used to prescribing. So you go in, you may not want it. You get your teeth pulled and they hand you a prescription. You go get it filled. Maybe you take 1 or 2 pills. You may have 10, 20, or 30. You stop taking them. You keep them in your cabinet. That's what they're talking about. No one that's going out and buying pills illegally is taking them down to the sheriff's department.
But I would think that number would be very low. But I'm thinking if there's somebody who says, hey, I want to finally quit. I want to get all the stuff out of my house.
Good point.
I'm sure that's
there's
rare,
got to be
but
some
there's
amount.
Got to be somebody.
So there's some.
So there is. So over the past 4 or 5 years, I can tell you that I've received personally hundreds of them from people that want to stop. And what I'll do is I'll take them right down and I'll throw them in the box. That happens less frequently.
Yeah.
One of the other things, though, that you mentioned during the break, and sometimes we should just
leave the break.
Yeah, leave the mic on, leave it hot during the break because it was really good. And it was something that I didn't think about. You're saying how, like, a lot of times for the kids, it's not the get high angle. They're looking at the profit potential of these things.
Well, you go back to, I'll put myself, I'm 15 years old. I'm back up in Boston. Mom and Dad want me to go work at the grocery store to stock milk. And, you're going to work for 2 weeks and you're going to come home after taxes with $30, $40. These kids know. They look in that cabinet. They may be an all-A student. They look in that cabinet and they say, man, I can pop a couple of these. I'm not going to take them, but I know that Billy will buy them for $20 a piece in the school. Crazy. Happens all the time. Happens a lot. What we see in the high school right now, the kids will trade their own Adderall. So that's another drug you don't hear about too much. That is a attention deficit hyperactivity drug. The kids will sell their own pills to other kids. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, Adderall is serious stuff too.
It's a pretty aggressive drug. A lot of kids are taking it. It's highly abused in college. It's become it's the new caffeine rush.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like speed, where they're
No, it's not almost like speed. It is speed.
yeah, where they're trying to stay up and do their tests and
My 12 Red Bulls is now 2 Adderalls. And that's what it's become. Although it like anything else, it becomes addictive. So over time, you get used to performing on that, and then you don't have it. You can't perform, and now you're out on the street buying an illegal narcotic.
Right. One of the other things that you and I were talking about earlier that was something else I hadn't really put together like that was, everyone's talking about the explosion in heroin. There's heroin everywhere. There's heroin overdoses. There's heroin death. And you said, we've been getting addicted to heroin for like 15, 20 years at the local drugstore. And I never really thought about it that way, but you're exactly right.
Well, think of it this way: heroin's been around forever.
Right.
And I've been sober a while, been in the recovery community for a good minute here. Even amongst the recovery community, the heroin addicts back in the day were different. They were different.
They were like the lower class.
Yeah,
people, right?
it was crazy.
Right.
What happened was, we don't have a heroin problem today if we didn't have a pill problem for 15 years. That's just a fact. I'm glad that we're making the changes that we're doing and it's finally being discussed. But at the same time, I get a little sick. I go home and I watch, President Obama. I hear it being discussed on these presidential campaigns, like this problem started last Thursday. Kids are dropping like flies all over the country. The heroin's here because these kids were addicted to pills.
People don't understand when they're taking prescription more times than not. If it's an opioid, look at the base root there. Opioid, opium. Same thing heroin's made out of.
Well, so opioid and opiate. Okay, opiate is natural. Opioid is manufactured. Chemically identical. Chemically identical.
So your brain doesn't know the difference between them.
Your brain does not know the difference. And I wish, they want to blame this is not about blaming. This is about finally coming to some realization and opening your eyes. Parents need to recognize when they go to the doctor for their kid. The big thing now is with dentists, because all these kids are getting their wisdom teeth pulled. I want a parent to imagine that doctor handing them a needle and a bag of heroin to give to their 17-year-old kid. There's not a parent in America that would go home and shoot up their kid. But most of these parents are going home and filling that prescription. Right. It's the same thing. It does the same
job.
thing.
Right.
See, I'm an alcoholic, so I used to drink. My drug was alcohol. It takes a long time to become addicted to alcohol and really have things fall apart. What takes 20 years in an alcoholic can happen in about 18 months with these pills. You can go from a normal kid to a full-blown addict in a very, very short period of time.
yeah, my sister is a local pharmacist, and she told me some very scary stories about how many people come in with these pills.
It's crazy.
Very scary.
And the pills went away because they had to. But now what you had, and the drug dealers, as bad as they are, these big cartels, they're intelligent businesses. They knew this was coming. They started ramping up manufacture of heroin a few years ago, knowing that the pills were going to go away. Now what they're doing, they're taking the powder heroin and they're turning it into a pill form. Here's why. Because no kid will ever start using heroin. No one's ever going to start in high school. Here's a bag of heroin and a needle. Go shoot this up. Never going to happen. So they're taking the powder and they're turning it into a pill. Because they know the kids will take the pill. I'll get them hooked on the pill and then they'll end up on the needle. Right. And it's tragic. Tragic.
That's very scary.
You go into Sarasota Memorial on any Friday or Saturday night and you'll see anywhere from 7 to 12 overdose coming.
Wow. And I think that's something that everybody needs to realize, that this isn't just happening in other places in the country. This is happening in our community.
In your backyard, in your neighbor's house.
You want to know where it's happening? If you're at home, go out on your front porch. Look across the street, look next door. That's where it's happening. It's happening everywhere. The other side of the track, it's just nonsense. And I hate to say this, it's finally gotten to a point where they had to do something about it, because it is the non-bad guy getting in trouble. It's everybody. I can't tell you that. It's amazing. Okay, I've been to overdoses in some houses that would just floor you in terms of education, great family, money.
Well, yeah, economic status has nothing to do with it, because, and you even see that sometimes it gets glorified in the movies, like Wolf of Wall Street. And these guys are snorting lines of coke as long as the desk and stuff like that. That's a bad thing. So, but realistically, there is no price point where you say, okay, if you make $50,000 and up, you're not doing this, or $1 million and up. No, it's across the board.
Absolutely across the board. It hits every demographic, every age group. Just does not matter, and it doesn't discriminate. The problem with this stuff, some people can pick up a drink, a beer in high school, right, and have a few beers, and they're a normal kid, or even maybe smoke a little bit of weed. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to become an alcoholic or a drug addict. This other stuff is so addictive that you can really not even be predisposed to becoming addicted. Try it a few times and be completely hooked.
So some people, am I right about this, are prone to an addictive type of a personality, or is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that'd be me.
Okay.
So here's what that looks like when you stop drinking. All of a sudden, my kids brought home these things called Welch's Fruit Snacks. I eat a box, 22 bags of these things when I sit down. But that's how I do everything. That's just my personality. And I know I can't do it with alcohol anymore. Not everybody's built that way. I'm built that way. But with these opiates, I don't think you have to be built a certain way. I've met hundreds of people that have been otherwise completely normal, functional individuals that get an injury.
Went off the rails.
Completely off the rails.
All right, we just got to go into a short break here, but once again, we'll be back with Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. You've been listening to the SRQ Review here on WSRQ, the voice of Sarasota, Manatee. Welcome back to the SRQ Review. Once again, our special guest today is Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. Now, one of the things that I was curious about, that I was asking about during the break, is there's this drug out there called crocodile that I recently just learned about. And apparently it's real easy for people to manufacture, even cheaper than heroin. And so some of the heroin addicts have been starting to make this and use it. And what's alarming about this, I mean, when you see the pictures, it literally eats away the flesh, like down to the bone. So, I mean, the pictures are horrific.
Horrific.
So I had said to you, what would make someone be willing to do that to themselves when they know that there's that type of risk? And you mentioned something that it actually makes a lot of sense.
But you and I had never thought about it.
Never thought about this.
No.
So in terms of the junkie mindset.
It's so I can give you the addict mindset across the board to answer your question. It'll never happen to me. And this includes me, right? So people would say, Chuck, I think you have a drinking problem. No. Bill has a drinking problem. Steve does. It does not matter. I can't tell you how many people in the county jail, for example, in the recovery pod, you'll sit around and a kid will say, I was never going to be my mother. I was never going to see my father. It was never going to be my father. After my cousin overdosed in front of me, it doesn't matter, right? It just doesn't matter. It's never going to happen to them. And now you have this situation where these people are chasing what you'd call the bad drugs. You see these overdose deaths occurring at an alarming rate. You would think, as a heroin user, you would avoid that area. No, they flock to it.
Yeah, this is the important part.
It's a marketing tool.
It's insane.
And I didn't realize this until this is something I picked up in the recovery pod from the guys. I brought it up. Can you believe this is going on? And one kid said, oh, yeah, I can't wait to get up there and get some. And I just really couldn't understand it. What do you mean? Explain that to me. Well, my job is to get as close to death as I can. What?
So in other words, if the drug is so strong that it's killing people, the other addicts are saying, wow, that must be the best stuff. So I want to get some of that and get right to the edge.
This is what I've heard from these guys. And I think what it does, right? Here's what you have to remember. Every one of these addicts, or me as an alcoholic, we all started out the same, right? We were all in a nursery. We all looked the same. You couldn't pick me out from you. I think when you hear that from an addict, that's the disease talk, right? That's how far they've gone in their mind. You just don't think clearly. It owns you. It owns everything that you do, that you would go and chase that. A very common occurrence, if you ever get a chance to interview some of the first responders, when they find overdose deaths, the needle is still in the arm. So think about how quick that happens. The needle is still in the arm. I went to a friend's house, about a month ago. in the bathroom. Parents were in the other room. 25-year-old kid, needle in the arm, dead. Brought him back with Narcan, thank God. He's now in treatment. He's in his 8th week of treatment, out of state. Narcan gives him a chance.
All right, please explain what that is.
Narcan has been around for a long time. It's a miracle drug. It's now, I think Tom Knight was one of the first sheriff's departments in the country, maybe in the state, I'm not sure, to carry it in the cruisers. It's always been with the ambulance, and it's been in the emergency room. Now it's out there as a first line of defense. It's also now available for your house. So if you are an addict, or if you have an addict that you love or that lives with you, you can have it in your home. Now, in the case of my friend, I started working with this young fella about 4 months ago, and the naloxone was in the house, and the conversation was, oh, we'll never need that, put it away. And I said, no, keep that around. You never know. On that particular night, it saved his life.
So
and that's not an exaggeration. Saved his life.
life.
You go from dead to alive.
And what I asked you before was, wouldn't then the drug addicts start trying to get this Narcan so that they could push themselves to the edge and then bring themselves back? And you said no.
Absolutely not. And that has been probably one of the things, I'll come right up and say it, that's probably one of the things that it's killed a lot of people over time, because that mindset has prevented naloxone from becoming, more readily available. Well, if you give it to them, they're gonna just overdose on purpose. No, they're not. You go immediately into withdrawal, which is the last thing any addict wants. This just saves your life. That's like saying, don't give me an EpiPen, even though it'll save my life if I have a food allergy. Right. Well, you're gonna eat more shrimp, Chuck, if you have the. No, I'm not, you idiot.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Right. No, I understand.
And I didn't mean to call you an idiot.
Well, I am, but that's a different subject. I don't have a problem with that. I just found it interesting. If it's been around for so long, why it isn't more widely used or hasn't been. And if Sheriff Knight and Sarasota has decided to be a pioneer and take this into the cruisers, well, bravo.
Absolutely.
Good thing.
We were at the press conference when he did that. I was in Washington, D.C. with the company that makes this device that talks to you, so anybody could administer it. It doesn't cause you any problem. I could administer it to you right now, not on any opiate. Nothing will happen to you. So it kind of pisses me off that it hasn't been more readily available. There's a lot of kids that are not here that maybe could be if this was.
Could have been.
Yeah, and it's that whole idea, well, if we tell the kids about sex, they're going to start having. No, they're not. It's come on. Right. These kids know what's going on.
Yeah, they do.
With these phones, they know more in 2 seconds about anything
than we did for 15 years
that's
growing up.
Absolutely true.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, let's bring this back to the program, to what you're doing right here. So you're giving these kids an incentive to stay on the narrow path and not go experimenting with this stuff, and you're rewarding them for saying, okay, we're kind of in a contract here. You're saying you're going to stay clean, and in return, we're going to reward you with something small here, and just keep that going.
Yeah, absolutely. And my heart's in recovery. It has been for a long time, and I've spent a lot of time in the Salvation Army, which is a great place, and in the recovery pod. But with 5 kids, I started to look around the high schools and realize even the middle schools, nothing was going on. There was no education going on, and no kids were getting help or getting addressed until they were at risk. And the identification of at risk meant you've already been in trouble.
Right. Sure.
So now we got to wait for the kid to get in trouble. No. So that's when I said, let's go back over here. I saw this DeFi program down in Northport. It seemed to, I loved what it did. It was just, at its core, it was an incentive-based program. Hey, you don't have to join, but if you want to join, this is what you need to do. You need to stay drug and alcohol free, tobacco free. And if you do, we're going to drug test you. And as long as you stay clean, we're going to give you discounts at area businesses. If you have a business you like, bring it in. We'll try to get them to sign up. So you stay clean, you get immediate rewards. And I thought it was a great thing. So they brought it up to bring up to Sarasota High School. I got involved. We got involved with the football coach who's from First Step. And I have to give a shout out to Jeff Radick, the principal over at Sarasota High, because he has, a lot of times you'll have these conversations with administration, and they'll yes you, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and nothing changes.
The phone never rings, right?
Yeah. Crickets.
Yeah.
Jeff Radick, let me tell you something. He took that school and tipped it upside down to help these kids and try and address this problem. And he's done a phenomenal job. You know, the coach is not only the football coach, but he's also a First Step employee. So now there's a full-time First Step counselor on that campus.
I didn't know.
Yeah, most people don't.
Didn't know.
During the break, we talked about getting high in the bathroom, right? So that was going on at Sarasota High School. You know what they did there? Took the doors off the bathroom. Little thing. Drug dealing was going on in a certain area. Put a cop over there. People were leaving campus, locked at the gates. Whole bunch of change, which most people don't do. We've had great success over there. With Empower, what we're trying to do is take DeFi and make it better. We're trying to bring incentives in now to get the parents involved.
Well, the thing I really like about the program is because it goes a little bit back to what we were talking about yesterday with Frankie, where, you know, it's not like it was when we were younger, where, you know, look, all kids grew up. We all made bad choices. That's part of the learning process of growing up. And when we were younger, you know, you might get in trouble for something, you get grounded, you might get slapped upside the head, and then that's it. But you don't end up with a record. These days, they go and they arrest the kids. They, you know, this can haunt them for the rest of their life.
No question.
Does haunt them, and that's what I try and explain to these kids. You know, I'll sit two kids down, and I don't condone any use. Right, under 21, I don't want you doing anything. Right, this is about postponement. I put things in two categories. All these prescription pills and all that, I've never seen anybody be able to do that successfully. So you can't do it. Alcohol and marijuana, they're a little different. And you cannot go with the Nancy Reagan approach with these kids anymore. You sit with a kid and say, you know, if you smoke weed, you'll never be a success. And they tell you about Steve Jobs would, you know, plant his own weed and he created Apple. So you have to give a more credible argument with these kids as to what's going on. So it's all about postponement. The reality is this: if a kid, two kids, maybe on the baseball team, one kid likes to have a couple of beers every now and then. This kid likes to smoke a little bit of weed. They both go off to college. The kid that drinks a couple of beers takes the drug test, he passes. You take the drug test, you fail. You lose your scholarship. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just
That's the way it is.
It's
right.
a fact. Kids need to understand this. These kids are going off to college with felonies, right? Think of it like this. I carry a gallon of vodka in high school. You carry an ounce of weed. You call my parents. You call a lawyer. Big difference.
Huge difference. No
And it's important to understand, to show these kids what's going on. The other thing we really try to do is educate them in terms of their social media. They're incapable of not putting their bad behavior online.
You can say
really
that.
true.
Incapable. And what happens, and they don't get this, and you know, I'm blessed, my kids are all athletes. Kids are losing scholarships every day. If a coach looks at you now and says, hey, I'm interested in you, before he asks about your batting
He's
average,
going to Facebook.
he says, give me all your social media accounts, because I'm going to find out who you are before you tell me
what you've done. All right, we're getting ready to go into a break here, but we'll be back with more from Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. You've been listening to the SRQ Review here on WSRQ, the voice of Sarasota, Manatee. And welcome back to the SRQ Review. Once again, our special guest today is Chuck Madden from the Empower Initiative. Now, before we get back to our discussion, I just want to report one thing to get out there today about the Sarasota Police Department. Yesterday, during the meeting of the Florida Cabinet in Tallahassee, Florida Governor Rick Scott and Volunteer Florida awarded the Sarasota Police Department volunteer ambassadors with the Champion of Service Award. There are 70 Sarasota Police volunteer ambassadors in the city of Sarasota. In the month of March, they gave an all-time department record of 1,809 hours of service. So I just want to go ahead and thank all of those volunteers.
Yeah, great program. Really is.
I think that's great. So, and it goes into, I mean, they help from the front desk, to delivering mail, sending alarm letters, trespass signs, all kinds
They
of
walk
the
the
list goes
streets.
on and on.
Yeah, everything.
So I just want to say thank you to all of them, and I think that's great that the governor recognized that for our police department.
I agree.
All right, so getting back to what you're doing here, Chuck, with the kids, and I mean, I think it's a great program, number one. I like, to me, it's logical what you're saying. Look, We're not telling them just say no and rewards in 20 years. If I know with my kids, look, if I want to get something, if they're not doing their chores or whatever, it's called, all right, I'm going to take your phone away. You want your phone back? Here you go. And now all of a sudden they'll go and get the chores done. So
what we're doing is not unique, right? We've been doing this as parents forever, right? Hey, eat the broccoli. And, well, I want my ice cream. Give me the candy. No, eat this, and then you get that. Right? It's no different.
You don't care if he likes the broccoli.
It doesn't matter. And that's one of the things that's interesting, right? A couple things. It doesn't matter why somebody doesn't drink or why they don't get high. It doesn't matter the reason that they don't do it as long as they're not doing it. That's number one. Number two, I don't know the exact stats, and I'm never going to be the stat guy, but the stat people will tell you, if you can take a kid and have him not start using anything until about age 23 or 24, the chances of them becoming addicted drop way down. It's about
and regardless of what the reason was that they didn't do it, as long as they don't do it till that age.
Correct, right? And it all has to do with how the brain develops, right? And that applies to anything. I think it's logical. You start a good habit when you're young, you carry that good habit through life. So the same thing applies to drinking or drugs. So this is about postponement. And again, this is not for a political debate on the ills of marijuana or good or bad. I don't care. But here's the fact. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to be readily legal, just like alcohol.
No question.
That train has left the station.
No question.
So when I'm looking at 17-year-old kids and 18-year-old kids who choose weed over drinking, I don't paint them with the druggy brush. I paint them with the same brush I paint the drinker with. If you want to be able to smoke weed when you're 40, I want you to be able to do that if it's legal. The way you have a chance of doing that is to not do it now. And I use myself as an example with my own kids. Dad used up all of his drink coupons in high school. Save some when you're 48. Save some when you're 50. I'd like to have a drink too, but I can't. Use them all up, right? But it's okay. And they see me. I know a lot of these kids. I have a lot of kids. Coach, been around for a long time. So these kids, I was never the guy who didn't drink. I was just Chuck, kind of the guy that acted like the kids. And then they come to find out that, he doesn't drink and he does this. So I think there's something there where it's not some old guy who's just 70 years old.
Some grumpy old guy.
Pointing a finger at him. Come on. So I say, look, yeah, I drank too much. Now I don't. Life's pretty good. It's hard to stop, but I did.
Let me ask you about the program. One of the incentives that you give these kids is they get discounts at local business. Now, that's important to me. It's interesting to me. So, I know now that, Sarasota football coach, being on this team, being part of this, I would imagine some of the Sarasota business owners are beginning to say, hey, this sounds attractive. So when I looked at the video that you have online, and it kind of made perfect sense to me, if you got 1,600 members and these kids are going to get a discount from local businesses, well, they're going to visit those businesses that are going to give the discount. So if I've got a street shop and I've got something kids want, I'm probably in this program because a bunch of them are going to come to my shop.
Yeah, and we've had some real good success. Everybody that we've approached has been great. We can go in, we're completely flexible. Hey, Panera, as an example, we want you to do a discount. Oh, well, we're packed with kids after school every day from 2 to 3:30 as it is. Well, okay. How about a discount for when you're not packed? Oh, really? You can do that? Yeah, we can limit it. So we want it to be advantageous to both the kid and to the business, right? It's got to work for both parties. Now, the real tangible, I didn't even think about this. See, my motivation is completely different, right? I have this thing. I'm trying to help other people. My kids are all involved. Well, my son gets invited he goes to Riverview, but he gets invited to the Mooney prom about 3 weeks ago. Dad, I got to get a tux. Oh, I have a tux, but he's 6'4". I'm not. So we have to go and rent a tux. We go in there, we get $55 off the tux for being in part of the program. Yeah.
Oh.
Didn't even think of it, right? So I have a lot of these kids that work out at the gym with me. Crunch has been a great supporter, 50% discount. And Smacks and Geckos, those guys have been terrific.
So for anybody out there listening right now with a business that wants to get involved, offer something in the program, how would they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through the Facebook page, Empower Initiative, or Chuck Madden. I have a personal Facebook page or my phone number. Can I give that out?
Yeah,
sure. By all means.
It's area code 941-545-5555. 4360. Love to talk to anybody, regardless of what the product is. We want anybody that wants to be involved. You know, this is all about the kids.
And also, for somebody listening, if you can think of a business that you think should be involved, even if it's not your business, tell them about it, or go ahead and let Chuck know, and you can contact him and say, hey, I've got this great program.
Yeah, and if you're a parent and it's not in your school yet, right now, and I understand the difficulty, there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to what you can do in the schools and what you can't do in the schools. So right now, we're in a couple of the high schools, and it's okay. Really, where I want this program is in the middle school. I want to be able to touch a kid in 6th grade. Now, the education would be completely different from a 6th grader than to a 12th grader. But ideally, down the road, if I can have a kid in a program starting in middle school and then have him graduate, have him come all the way through, that's the goal. Because what we did in high school, today is happening in middle school. By the time I touch a kid in high school,
He's already been there.
I totally agree with that.
what I did in 11th grade, they're doing in 7th. You know,
Very scary.
and how you know that? They're not capable of not putting their bad stuff up on here. I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, the phones are.
Well, it's also leading to addiction.
It is an addiction.
I was going to say, you
The
want to talk about
phone is
addiction?
an
The phone by
addiction.
itself is.
So not only is it an addiction, here's something to make you sick. These games and these phones, at the core, you look at the studies, they actually use addiction mentality for all of these games, everything that these kids are doing. They do the addiction, it's the same component. It triggers the exact same thing in your mind. They target addiction. But what it does, it limits personal interaction. The difference between today and, you know, when I was in high school, I saw it in firsthand in my house. 6 guys downstairs, all athletes, good kids. I go, what are you guys doing? All in the room together, all on the phone. No one talking. They think they're hanging out. No personal interaction, but they think they have 3,000 friends because they have Instagram and all this other nonsense,
Right.
whatever it is. But what happens is that leads to an isolation, which leads to medication.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time here today, but we want to thank you very much for coming on the program, making everyone aware of this wonderful initiative that you have, and we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Really appreciate you having me, and I'm right around the corner.
Yeah,
Anytime.
It's a great program. Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll make sure to put your page on the WSRQ homepage, so for anybody who's looking to get in contact, we'll make sure that they find their way to you.
That's great. I'm not hard to find.
All right, thanks a lot. And I just want to remind everybody that this weekend they're going to have the prescription drug drive that Chief Pepino was talking about. It's going to be this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Remember, you can go down to the Sarasota Police